Hello, everybody. I know you've all been here all weekend, but I have to say, it is so good to be back at bloody Scotland. Isn't it fantastic that we can be here once again? My name's Louise Welsh. I'm a writer and I'm Professor of Creative Writing at the University of Glasgow, and I'm very, very excited, as you can tell, to be here. Before we begin the main event, I'd like to introduce our Crime in the Spotlight author. And as you know, one of the objectives of Bloody Scotland is to support new authors by providing them with a platform and some exposure. So with the generous support of the Open University, Crime in the Spotlight gives them a few minutes to introduce themselves and to read an extract of the work. And we're very, very lucky with our Crime in the Spotlight author today. So before we meet Karen Slaughter, please put your hands together and welcome Sarah Goodwin, who's the author of Stranded. Come on, Sarah, welcome.
Hello, I'm Sarah Goodwin. I'm wearing my jazziest shirt for the occasion, and I'm going to be reading from my debut novel, Stranded, which kind of came out of my love of foraging and the witch trials. It's about a sort of mismatched group of 8 strangers who take part in a reality TV show on a Scottish island, and then things get worse. So this extract sees Maddie, the main character, and Duncan, the antagonist, heading off to get help from the on-site crew, who they haven't seen for a year. I'd gotten slightly ahead of Duncan on the long walk and stopped on the rise to let him catch up. I had the sense that I didn't want to face this alone. Together we looked down at the snow-topped cabin. There were no lights on at all. I was glad Duncan didn't offer up some excuse, like that they might be asleep already. Something was very wrong. To deny that now would somehow make me feel worse. Without a word, we started the descent towards the cabin. I reached the porter cabin first and shone my torch around. Everything was quiet and undisturbed. There were no footprints in the snow, no divots or holes where footprints had been filled with fresh snowfall either. The generator beside the cabin was silent. I turned the beam of the torch to the door, and my breath caught in my throat. When I'd last seen the cabin, it had been summer. I'd looked down on the little structure in its tangle of wilderness and noticed that the door was open to let a breeze in. Now, in sub-zero temperatures, with small flurries of snow starting to fall once more, the door was still open. I heard Duncan's footsteps come to a halt behind me, and I pushed open the door. For the first time, I was grateful for the cold. I imagined that without it, the smell would have been unbearable. Inside the porter cabin, all was dark. The light from my torch flashed back at me from screens and steel fixtures. Against the back wall were bunk beds, the kind I'd seen in prison films, plain and utilitarian. On the left wall was a door, I presumed to a bathroom, and beside the door was a kitchenette. The right-hand wall was given over to desks and a bank of monitors, but all were dark. Not a single light blinked. Several things had fallen over. A desk lamp, some books, a mug. The floor was obscured by drifting snow nearest the door, then with dried leaves that had blown in. And furthest from the door, around the bunk beds, where a shape distended the blankets, there was a large brownish pool. Against every natural impulse, I went closer. My feet crunched in the darkness, and I followed the torchlight down to see dead flies between the leaves. The bedding was soaked and frozen with the same brownish effluent that covered the floor, but it did not obscure the face of the man in the bottom bunk, one of the 2 whose names I'd learned but forgotten months ago. I could no longer tell which, as his face was so warped. Empty eye sockets gaped at the ceiling, his mouth hung open too wide, and there were holes where insects had burrowed into his cheeks. I gagged and turned quickly from the liquefying body, reaching the door before I vomited bile onto the pure snow. Thank you.
That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much to Sarah, and her books are on sale, so do go and buy them.